Hey APESers, it's time to do chapter 16, Waste Generation and Waste Disposal. The first page is a case study on paper or plastic. And the question is, which causes less harm to the environment, paper cups or styrofoam cups or polystyrene, which is a type of plastic? So there are pros and cons to both, and so I want you to read through and kind of look at the pros and cons of paper and the pros and cons of styrofoam, and to realize that this is a complex issue and there's no one right answer. Depends on how you look at it. So just a good example of what we're going to be looking at in this chapter. Alright, to start off with, let's talk about the fact that humans are the only organisms that produce waste others cannot use. Yay for humans. We live in what's called a throwaway society, and the US is actually began this whole thing. It's the idea that we just throw stuff away. It's just easier, and you'll see that increased industrialization and wealth result in more waste generated. So the more industrialized and wealthy a country is, the more waste they tend to generate. There's this idea called planned obsolescence, and this is when the design of a product is made so that it has to be replaced within a few years. Think about laptops, cell phones. They become obsolete or unusable in just a couple of years, and that helps to go along with that throwaway society. Well, we might as well just throw it away and get a new one. Okay, so talking about municipal solid waste, or MSW, that would be any discarded material that is not a liquid or gas. Yay, solid waste. All right. And it's generated in lots of different places: domestic, industrial, business, and agricultural sectors. So let's look at the composition of MSW. Paper products are the #1 component of MSW. Now look over here to this figure 16.5. These numbers are way outdated because this is from 2008, but the trends are still the same. So you'll still see that paper is the #1 component of MSW. And then the #2 component would be yard waste and food. And then in the source, where do the most items, solid waste, come from? The majority comes from containers and packaging. And then for the source, also the second would be yard and food waste. All right, so also talking about e-waste as another type of municipal solid waste. This would be electronic waste or e-waste. This is discarded electronic devices, TVs, cell phones, computers. And we just talked about planned obsolescence and the idea that they want it to go, to become obsolete in just a few years, so we're piling these up. The issue with e-waste is that they may contain heavy metals like lead and mercury that can leach from landfills into groundwater, so they have to be disposed of properly. All right, so first we're going to look at ways to divert waste from the waste stream, and that would be reduce, reuse, recycle, compost. So looking at the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle, I want you to notice that reduce is mentioned first, then reuse, then recycle. Reduce is mentioned first because that requires the least amount of energy, so the least energy intensive, and all the way to recycling, which is actually the most energy intensive. So that's usually the third option of what to do, and there's actually a few more R's that could be in front of this as well. So reduce is just simply the idea of reducing how much you are using and how much you are producing. So a source reduction, for example, of less packaging, can we say Amazon, and the fact that it comes with a bunch of different boxes and lots of space. Reuse allows items to stay in the system longer before becoming waste. And then talking about recycling on page 443, recycling is when they take certain solid waste materials, process and convert them into new products. Advantages is that it reduces the current global demand on minerals, so those virgin materials are the minerals that are required to make them. But the disadvantages is that recycling is energy intensive, can be costly, and can be an issue when wrong things have been put into certain recycling bins and they have to be gone through. 2 types of recycling, closed loop and open loop. Closed loop recycling is when a product is remade into the same type of product, so aluminum cans remade into aluminum cans. versus open loop, where it's something that's made into, so you can take like plastic soda bottles and make a fleece jacket. All right, then talking about composting. Composting is the process of organic matter such as food scraps, paper, and yard waste decomposing on purpose, and it can produce a great fertilizer that you can use in your gardens. Drawbacks would be that it can have an odor and it can attract rodents. Now keep in mind that no meat or dairy is allowed in there, so it's mostly just veggies, veggie products, yard waste, clippings. And I just want to remind you that we actually have a Balls Ford compost facility off of Dumfries Road that composts for us, so it'd be awesome if we could go visit that. But. All right, so then after looking at ways to divert waste, then we have to look at how waste is disposed. The number one way that waste is disposed is in a landfill. We'll talk about that in a second. So you'll see here, again, figure 16.13 is outdated, but it's still the same, that the number one way that municipal solid waste is disposed of is in a landfill. Other ways include incineration, illegal dumping, and being dumped in the ocean. So let's talk about the sanitary landfills first. These are engineered facilities designed to hold MSW with as little contamination of the surrounding environment as possible. If you've ever been to the Prince William County landfill, it is amazing, and it really is a feat of engineering and all that they have to do to try and keep the surrounding environment protected. Now, drawbacks from sanitary landfills could be that they can contaminate groundwater. The leachate can contaminate groundwater. And also landfills release harmful gases, specifically methane, from the decomposition of waste. So figure 16.14 looks at a modern sanitary landfill. Good basic diagram. It is specifically missing the stormwater collection system, but we will do an activity in class that will help you with that. So looking at a modern sanitary landfill, you need to, they always include a stormwater collection system, leachate collection system, a cap for when it's done, and a methane collection system to collect the methane. And what's really cool is that when it collects the methane in pipes, then it can actually burn the methane gas and use that to create electricity, which the Prince William County landfill does, and it helps to run that facility. Factors in landfill decomposition, so like how quickly it decomposes, things like that, include what the trash is composed of and what kind of conditions are needed for microbial decomposition of the waste, like how hot is it, how cold is it, stuff like that. A couple other terms you need to know about landfills. Sitting is the figuring out where the landfill is going to go, the designation of the location of the landfill. This is highly controversial, as you can imagine, and this is where NIMBY comes into play. This is not in my backyard. You're not putting a landfill in my backyard, but really you'd be amazed that our Prince William County, you can't even, it doesn't smell like anything, so sometimes you hardly even know it's there. And then tipping fee is another term you need to know, and this would be the cost for taking the waste and like tipping it out of your truck into the landfill. So however much waste, it's, you know, the tipping fee for that, and this encourages less waste as the tipping fees go up. All right, so then let's look at incineration, which is another way to dispose of waste. Incineration is when waste is burned at high temperatures, and the benefits, reducing the volume of solid waste, and also can be used to create energy. So you can do waste to energy incinerators. So figure 16.16. This is kind of the typical incinerator, but then this one says a high energy can be used to create steam and generate electricity, which would happen kind of somewhere else. So sometimes the heat generated from an incinerator is used rather than released, and that's when it's called waste to energy. So it's not letting the energy be wasted, it's actually using it to heat buildings or to run turbines to produce electricity. So those are good, those are benefits. Drawbacks are that incinerating, burning things releases air pollutants, also produces ash, There are higher tipping fees at incinerators. The waste is not always completely burned, and you have to have lots of waste. Like you need a continual supply of waste to keep it burning, because you want to keep your burners like burning. So those are some of the problems. Okay, then we talked about 2 other ways of disposing of trash or waste. One of them is illegal dumping. And this is when some items are not accepted in landfills, and so people dump them illegally, and of course this can lead to environmental problems. One example, rubber tires. When left in piles, rubber tires can become breeding grounds for mosquitoes that spread disease, so that can be an issue. Also, some countries dump their waste in the ocean. This has led to large floating islands of trash in the oceans. One particular example is called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And this is very dangerous to wildlife because they can become entangled in the waste as well as ingest it. Okay, let's talk about hazardous waste. This is one of those that a lot of times is illegally dumped because people don't know how to properly dispose of hazardous waste. This is waste material that is harmful to humans or ecosystems. It could be cleaning products, fuel, some of the batteries, those kinds of things. Only about 5 to 10% at the most is recycled, which means the rest of it is disposed of. These should not be disposed of in regular landfills, so they need to be disposed of in special places. Now, our landfill has special collection sites for various hazardous wastes, so you can go and there's like the purple bins and different things for this and that. They have to then treat the hazardous waste before they dispose of it. The required legislation that you need to know is the RCRA and the CERCLA. RCRA tracks from cradle to grave in the hopes of reducing and eliminating hazardous waste along the lifetime of a product. CERCLA is a Superfund Act. This provides funds to clean up contaminated sites from unknown sources, and these are like the highest level. Best example is Love Canal in New York. Love Canal was a housing development school built on top of an old hazardous waste landfill. Everybody started getting sick. Took them a long time to figure out what was going on. Realized that it was because they were on top of a landfill. Now, brownfields, these are not Superfund sites because Superfund sites are the highest risk. So they're maybe not the highest risk, but they're still risk. These are contaminated sites that may require cleanup before it can be redeveloped, and so these kind of have their own program to help protect those. Now, the new ways to think about waste, besides reduce, reuse, recycle, that kind of thing, is the life cycle analysis. So looking at a material, looking at an item, and all the materials used and released throughout the lifetime of a product. This is called cradle to grave. So from the very, very beginning products that make this item to the end where it's disposed of. By looking at the life cycle analysis of an item, it can help with proper disposal, economics, and lowering environmental impact, reducing packaging, all sorts of things. And then finally, integrated waste management. Integrated is going to use lots of different techniques. It uses several waste reduction management and disposal strategies to reduce environmental impact of municipal solid waste. The biggest focus is on source reduction first. So more of a holistic approach there. All right, and that's it.